previously on a Scout Method podcast. So at the end of it all, like at this point in this journey here, the mistakes I made and the mistakes that I alluded to earlier and in the previous episode is that I put myself in high places and my character couldn't sustain me. So I had to deal with those character flaws. So character, in this case, is a statement on how your deeds, your thoughts, and your intentions line up with morality. Not your morality, not my morality. Morality. Objective morality. And the hallmarks of good character, or rather, let me word it this way. The characteristics of good character are these as follows, right? The first one is integrity. And integrity is always being honest, always doing the right thing in a general sense. Well, here we are, episode 20, and also the third episode, closing us out in our success series here, right? So the first two episodes, the first episode I talked about finding your purpose. The second episode, I talked about building good character. And this one, we're going to, again, close out. We're going to talk about maintaining balance. And these three tips, when combined, when put together, will lead you to success in life and after. But let's dig into it a little bit. Well, before I can even dig into it, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing well out there. I'm Coach Evan. This is Say Cheese and Lift Studio, and you're listening to the Scout Method podcast, a one-stop shop for not only physical fitness, but mental fitness, emotional fitness, and spiritual fitness. All right, obviously I'm excited to get to this episode, so let's get to it. Now, let me pick up where I left off in my success journey here, right? So previous episode, I think I left off as somebody calling me a pit bull in one of the meetings that I had. And at the time, I thought it was I thought it was a good thing. I thought it was, yeah, I'm a pit bull. Like, yeah, I'm going to get my way. I'm going to do my thing, blah, blah, blah. Years later, of course, I look at it differently. I look at it in a way now where it definitely wasn't a positive thing. I kind of look at it as a negative thing here. But I noticed from that point on, I was invited to less meetings, and I was definitely on less calls. I could tell that people started to become uncomfortable around me. And at that time, I blamed everything else but what it actually was, which was my character flaws were showing. Right? So I move along and I start to figure it out a little piece by piece what's going on. And here's the deceiving part about all that, right? Because, again, we're talking years ago. I didn't really have visibility into what the flaws actually were, primarily because I thought I was being alpha, right? And let me park it here for a quick second in terms of, just to talk about this whole idea of being alpha, right? Because in order to be alpha, you have to be a person of integrity, right? Being alpha isn't just about, pounding your chest, stomping around, demanding things of people, doing whatever it takes to get things done. Being alpha isn't even about getting things done. It's not about, shouting, screaming, and demanding, deceiving. It ain't about any of that stuff. Being alpha, if you were to be a person who is alpha, that basically means that people look to you for guidance and leadership. But in order for people to look to you for guidance and leadership, you have to be a trustworthy person, right? Because it doesn't really work outside, like out of fear. Because, that might be a different topic, different day, but, fear kind of, like if leading out of fear typically breeds mutiny, disloyalty, right? But in order for you to be alpha, you have to be a person of integrity. The alphas, the real alphas, the true alphas, those are the people who have a lot of responsibility for other people, right? A lot of people look to them for, again, guidance and leadership. A lot of people trust them for guidance and leadership, right? Now that there are a bunch of, fake alphas out there, and I mean, they're kind of, you could kind of see them from a mile away. But the fake alphas, they may have a lot of followers, a lot of converts here, right? But what I say that speaks to is actually the fallen state of the culture. Because you have a bunch of lost souls following a bunch of lost souls who are basically just barking out orders and demands and things like that, right? But all things being equal, usually a person of integrity, the true alpha, a person of integrity, is a person that many look to because they know under that person's leadership or guidance, they are going to grow. Okay? So anyway, I realized I had some character flaws that needed to be dealt with, right? And I knew in order for me to be successful and live a fulfilling life, I knew I had to change. Like I had to be a different person. So the first place I started was with my intentions, right? I asked myself, what did I intend to do? And before, my intent was solely about me, right? It was about me. My intentions, everything that I did, every action that I took was about me becoming the dude, me becoming that guy, me becoming him, right? That's what I lined almost everything up with, becoming the guy, right? So then I intentionally changed what that focus was back then to helping someone else become the guy or the woman. But my point is basically I wanted to make sure that everything and everyone that came in contact with me became better. And that notion I still work towards to this very day, right? Everything that comes in contact with me, everybody, every single individual who comes in contact with me, they would be better for having come in contact with me. And I started to line up my decisions in that manner. Essentially, my decisions were lined up with seeking to provide rather than to take. And over time, I became different. I became a different person. I dedicated everything I had, everything that I was able, I dedicated everything to providing for everyone else and making sure that everyone else is good. Now, in that, I learned another valuable lesson. So for years, I worked the other extreme end where I dedicated my life to serving everyone else. I dedicated everything to serving everyone else, family included, right? I mean, I was focused only on the growth of others. Now, little by little, over time, over those years, as those years start to pass, I noticed I was getting dark circles under my eyes. And I was getting sick more often. And all of a sudden, aches and pains started popping up. And then it happened, right? I broke down again. But this time, it was worse than the first. Worse than the first. It was bad. It was so bad, I needed to talk to someone about it. And talk a while about it. There were a lot of different things that I was dealing with that I wasn't actually dealing with because I was dealing with everybody else's stuff. And through these talks that I had, I realized a few things about myself. You know, there were some things that I could use that actually helped me get out of that hole again. But then there were some other things that I had to let go of. And I gotta be honest here. I had zero balance. I had no balance. None at all. And it was destroying me, right? I was so focused on giving, and I just didn't. I actually looked at consuming as an evil thing. There was no balance there at all, right? And I would take, I basically just went too hard, and I didn't rest as hard. You know, I would continue to work, continue to drive at it because I'm building something for someone else, but I wouldn't play. And there was nothing fun that I did. It was all work. And I was driving myself into the ground. I failed to maintain balance in every state, right? Like physically, I failed to maintain balance. I wasn't resting enough. I wasn't recovering enough, and my body was paying for it, right? Mentally and emotionally, I was cooked, exhausted, and I didn't do anything to actually support good mental health, good emotional health. Did none of those things, right? So I was just burnt out, right? And spiritually, there was no progress spiritually because I wasn't feeding it. I wasn't feeding my soul. I wasn't doing it. I was just there, grinding, mashing, going hard, not sleeping. Again, it sounds again like what some of these motivational speakers said. So, the last tip I have for you to find success in life and after is, drum roll, to maintain balance. All right, so let's get right to it. What do I mean when I say balance? What do I maintain balance? What do I mean by balanced here, right? So, I mean harmony between the different aspects of your life and the different aspects of your being. We're not talking about an equal distribution here, though. We're talking about a proportional distribution. Now, let me just wait there for a quick, or stop there for a second so I can break that down real quick. Equal distribution, let's just take work and play. Equal distribution would be you work for 8 hours, you play for 8 hours. The thing is, that's a quick way to burn out, right? Because if you're working, let's just say you get up at 6 o'clock, right? And you work, or whatever, you work the regular 9 to 5, 8 hours a day. Then you're going to play for another 8 hours after that. And ideally, people do, I've seen people do crazy things, and I've seen people do that before, and they don't get as much sleep, right? that's not necessarily balanced either, right? So a proportional distribution in that instance would be, hey, you know what? You maybe work for 8 hours and you play for 4, and then you recover for the rest, right? There's always this aspect of recovery that should be involved in maintaining balance, but I'll dig more into that a little bit later on. But that's the idea. It's harmony between aspects of your life, different things that go on in your life, and aspects of your being. So like your physical self, your mental self, your emotional self, and your spiritual self, right? And this is all in efforts to reach equilibrium or an evenness, right? Now I get that, if I read out the whole definition straightforward, it would be a mouthful. But basically what I'm saying is maintaining balance offers you stability, okay? A stable body is a thriving body. A stable mind is a sound mind, right? A stable heart isn't thrown everywhere by every single stimulus it encounters. And a stable spirit is rock solid, okay? This allows you to take on challenges more effectively. It allows for more opportunities for growth. So essentially, living a life of balance means that you are dedicating adequate effort and energy to different aspects of your life without neglecting any single aspect. Now, at times, that is a very, very difficult thing to do. But without it, you're more likely to crash out than you are to actually achieve success. All right, so I'm going to jump right into how maintaining balance leads to success in life and after, okay? Balance allows for stable and sustained energy, focus, and progress. Okay, let me read that again, right? Balance allows for stable and sustained energy, focus, and progress. When we're talking about success in life and after, we aren't talking about a small, short-term things. We're talking about a long-term thing, right? So to achieve great things, to achieve your purpose, you need energy for the long term here, right? In order to build the character required for that success, you need energy for the long term, which says that you need to be strategic on how you use your energy. What do you use energy for? What tasks are you blazing through and which ones are you putting off? What is your return on those tasks? Those are just some of the questions to ask yourself at this point. But again, the point is maintaining balance allows you to have the energy to effectively get stuff done. And speaking of the return of tasks, maintaining balance allows you to focus on the important tasks. It allows you to critically think. And more important yet, it allows you to stay on track if energy does fade a little bit. And that progress serves as confirmation that you are on the right track or on the right path here, right? It can kind of boost your confidence as you go along. By maintaining balance, you see more progress. Progress, though, we want to keep in mind, progress doesn't always necessarily mean you're getting closer to your goals or getting closer to fulfilling your purpose. Sometimes progress can be an adaptation you make when discovering what works and what doesn't. But let's talk about the various aspects of balance, the various aspects that we must balance, the ones in life and the ones a part of our being. The aspects that I really want to focus on here is the idea of giving to others versus consuming from others. Your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self, right? Work versus rest/recovery. And actually, and those are it. That's it, right? Okay, so let's start with this balance that we need to strike of giving to others and consuming for ourselves, okay? Now, mind you, this is what I was speaking of earlier, right? I missed this balance. I missed striking this balance twice and using both extremes here, right? So the first extreme was I was consuming so much for myself. Everything was about me. I can just take. And then I went to the complete opposite side, and then I'm just give. And I know there's like, well, what's wrong with that? Well, here's the thing. If you have nothing left to give, what are you giving? You're done if you have nothing left to give. There's a balance that you need to strike so that you can sustain the giving if that's the case. But I didn't strike that balance. So I gave and I gave and I gave and I gave and I burnt out. Right? So there's a balance to be struck between giving and consuming. But giving versus consuming what exactly, right? That's time, effort, energy, resources. Wait, this sounds familiar. Opportunity. Once again, biblical talents. But look at that, right? So we've come up on this idea of balance, the balance to strike between what you offer and what you receive, okay? This is an important balance for a few reasons. First and foremost, it prevents burnout. And you can only give but so much before you run out of that stuff to give. I mean, it's kind of logical in a sense, but sometimes we just don't look at it that way. So there has to be a replenishing of sorts. And the wonderful thing here is you don't always have to receive what you gave in order to be fulfilled. For instance, if I gave money to a particular event, or you better yet, no, I gave money and then I got back a little bit more money. That's fine. That's okay. It's not as really fulfilling, right? But let's just say I gave money to a particular event and I was replenished by the people I met. Now we're cooking. Now that's a different kind of balance here, right? But that's also saying that you don't necessarily have to receive money back in order for it to work. The only requirement here of what you receive back is it has to be something that refuels you or nourishes you, right? So what you receive back has to add to you in a meaningful way, right? Giving money and getting money back doesn't necessarily make the cut here. But let's say you give money and you get back time. Now we're cooking a little bit, but I think you get the point here, right? Also, maintaining balance between giving and receiving allows you to build trust and foster deeper and more meaningful connections. You're essentially building trust through fair exchange. Remember, building that trust factor makes it more likely you will achieve success because others will be right along with you as support. And here's a great example of someone who maintained balance in giving and receiving. And that person is Jesus. Jesus serves as a great example because he had and has endless compassion. And he showed it a number of different ways, through his healings, through his teachings, through his miracles, and ultimately through his death. He gave everything, but he also accepted support and gratitude and devotion. Believers anointed him with oils. And just thinking about it, I keep going back to the woman who basically used her tears to clean his feet, and she used expensive oils to clean his feet. And Jesus didn't stop him. And in fact, it was Judas who was just like, yo, we could have took that oil and sold it and got some money off of it, right? Jesus was just like, nah, chill, bro. For lack of better terms, you about to stab me in the back anyway, so, sit down, take a whole seat. But I'm sorry. The point is, this woman offered expensive oils. She offered her tears and she offered her devotion to Jesus and he accepted it. Right? So that's major. That's major, right? And it's a perfect example of what that looks like to maintain that balance. He gave everything and he still did receive stuff as well. I mean, even throughout his ministry, when he was going to, place to place, people housed him and the disciples, right? They fed him and the disciples. So it's just like he struck the balance perfectly. So not surprisingly so, right? So, but he also, Jesus did, took the time to replenish and recharge. Often he withdrew from the crowds to pray and reflect. So ultimately, what am I saying here? And what am I saying by using Jesus as an example? What I'm saying is sustained giving requires renewal. Sustained giving requires renewal. Okay? Now, another important set to balance here is work versus rest or recovery. And this is kind of simple, right? I think we instinctually know this, that we can only work but so much before we get a little hurt and a little messed up in the process here, right? So I think we know this already, but I'm going to mention a little bit about it anyway, right? It's the same idea though. You want to balance work and rest to prevent burnout, right? But why I mention this balance in particular is because striking this balance has been shown time and time again to enhance creativity, to improve critical thinking, to improve your health, to boost productivity, and to create a pathway for true growth, which also means it's a pathway to true success. The best way to strike this balance, though, is to plan in detail both work days and rest days or recovery days, right? Let me go to the weightlifting route here. You can go, you can go online and find anything, right? But for the most part, the general perception is I'm gonna need a program that's going to tell me my workout days and what I'm going to do on these workout days, and we're going to plot this bad boy out to the T. So let's just say I work out 3 days or 5 days a week. 5 days a week. I have a workout for each of those days. I know exactly how many sets, how many reps, and the weight that I have to use for each of those. And then we get to the rest day, and it's just rest day. So it's like plan in detail those rest days as well. And that's just an example, like just use that as an analogy for life, right? We strategize on how to get things done. We don't often strategize on how to chill and how to rest, because the perception is that's lazy, but it's anything but, right? Now, granted, it can be abused like anything, right? There are actually lazy people who go out there and do so. Hey, man, I'm going to plan how I'm chill all day. Right? So I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But what I'm saying is there's nothing wrong with if you have everything in check and everything is balanced and you have the strategies for how you're going to get things done, how you're going to work, you should also have an equally detailed strategy on how you're going to rest and recover. And those two should work hand in hand in whatever you're doing. And my final important balance to strike here is the 4 parts or the 4 aspects of your being: your body, mind, heart, and soul. Right? This is arguably the hardest balance to strike, but it's the most beneficial and the most meaningful. Okay? These 4 aspects, these 4 parts of your being depend on each other. And they depend on each other in different ways. If one of them starts to fall off, the entirety of your being starts to suffer, right? It's like parts of a building, right? These are foundational pieces to your building. And if one of them is off, you're going to start to lean. You should find a balance between the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, because too much of one usually comes at the expense of another. Think about it for a second. A heavy focus on the physical, or the literal, usually comes at the expense of emotional and spiritual intuition. A heavy focus on the mental, or the intellect, usually comes at the expense of the spiritual. Heavy focus on the spiritual usually comes at the expense of the physical, or literal, and the intellect. Or I'm going to word this one even differently. Rational thinking. So you go too heavy in any one of those aspects, something else is going to suffer here. So that's why I say this is the most important balance that you need to strike in order to achieve success in life and after. There's also another side to this as well, though. Right? The other side here is you don't want to, well, maybe it's not another side, but it's in conjunction with what I just said. You don't want to focus too heavily on one because it's at the expense of the other, but you also run the risk of making that one your idol. Again, I talked about this when I was talking about the healthy and strong body. You could fall for the trap of making your body your idol. You're worshiping yourself, right? But there's people all over the place who worship their own emotions, where they think that the end all be all and the way it is and the truth and the light is in how they feel. There's also a whole bunch of people, and this is more common than not, who would just think that the intellect is the end all be all, that their intellect is the end all be all. And so they worship their ideas. They worship their ability to think. They worship other people's ideas. And then it becomes their idol. And the crazy thing is, you could do this spiritually as well. You could be so super spiritual that you don't make any sense. You don't make any rational sense at all. And some parts of it doesn't, some parts of it is like, okay, well, this is past a little bit the comprehension of man. But here's the thing. God has blessed us with a rationally thinking mind, a sound mind. So anytime somebody comes up with something that just sounds completely off the wall, well, and it sounds hyper spiritual, you kind of have to think a little bit like, what they on? What are they on right now? It's interesting because they are, I'm not going to say that group of people that they're most deceived, but they are in risky territory and they don't really see it because they think that they're worshiping God. They believe that they're worshiping God, but they're worshiping their idea of God, and it ends up being themselves. It's a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing. Where it's one of those, it's almost like there's people out there that say that like their faith basically got them to where they were. And I hear that often where it's just like, I just have to have faith. I just have to, well, man, look, at the end of the day, is it in God's will or is not? Now, I understand you having faith, and that's a requirement. Absolutely. But your faith didn't get you anywhere. Right? Because at the end of the day, if it's not in his will, it wasn't happening. So there's a balance to strike there. There's even a balance to strike within that idea itself. But let me pull up a little bit, right? So here, now let's talk about how do you maintain balance and what are the challenges that are going to arise or could potentially arise in you trying to seek that balance, right? And it's a checklist of things, so I'm just going to wrap them all for you, okay? So to maintain balance, you have to become good at time management. You have to prioritize self-care. You have to learn to be adaptable. And then now we're going to get into, you have to perform the physical basics, right? Exercise, sleep, hydration, nutrition, healthy eating, right? You have to perform the emotional basics. Meditate, journal or journaling, and find that time, carve out that time for reflection. You also have to perform the mental basics. You have to think critically, keep learning, and be mindful. You also have to perform the spiritual basics. Pray, study, worship. And lastly, at least on this list of tips that I have for you here in ways to maintain balance, right? You want to build a strong support system, like a network of friends, a network of family, acquaintances, people who support you, people who you can support, people who support you, people who you can line up in like that fair exchange, right? That mutual success. Now, what are the challenges to maintaining your balance? And these are some of them. And some of them are a doozy, right? So one is stress and overwhelm. You know, when the pressure is high, it usually gets to be a little difficult to maintain your balance. Lack of prioritization, right? You don't know what task to do first, and you don't know what task to even do at all. So you're just doing stuff, and they're not all of them have the same return, right? Fatigue, I don't think I need to explain that one. Others' expectations. That is a tough one to maintain. Okay, so that's a big one. Others' expectations. So the expectations that people have of you oftentimes will drain you of all your energy. You know what? It's one of those things where, and it doesn't always have to be somebody who's like against you, right? It could be people who are well-meaning and they're on your side and they support you, but they have these expectations of you that you have to meet. And there comes in the pressure to meet those expectations. It gets to be a little hectic in terms of trying to maintain balance when meeting multiple people's expectations and they're all different, right? Another one is lack of or terrible support. So it's going to be really hard to maintain balance if you don't have a decent support system, right? A decent network, a squad, right? Like it's really hard to maintain balance without others. Procrastination, that stands for itself. You know, I mean, that's easy, right? Information overload. That's another one. So I was thinking about this for a while. When I was coming up with this list, I got stuck on information overload because I deal with information all day, every day. And I don't really have a good sense of when it's too much information. But I can kind of see a pathway in which where you gather so much data on stuff that you don't know which way to go. So like paralysis by analysis, basically, right? I think that's kind of where like information overload would be a thing, right? Because there is such thing as too much information, right? And sometimes you're confronted by other people with a whole bunch of information that you don't really know what to do with. And that can kind of burn you out and leave you stuck, right? So there's the paralysis by analysis side, and then there's just the pure on, you just got bulldozed by a whole bunch of stuff, right? Another one is social overload. That so the idea I had there was I was more so talking about social media, but that also kind of is hand in hand with information overload too. But and here's a little bit of a tip, tip to the tip, and another little bit of advice here. Go on like social media. I guess they call them detoxes, like social media detoxes. But like go on like like have periods in time where you're not on your phone, not on a screen, and just watch your life get a little bit better. Everybody have heard that has done this, and every single time that I've done this, just shut off all screens and just live. Life ends up being a little bit easier to manage, to handle. And a lot of people say that they're less anxious and less worried, less fearful. There's just a lot of different benefits to having these, screen detoxes, right? So, that's pretty much, social overloading on the social media and overloading on you're out everywhere doing everything. Like that makes it difficult to maintain balance a lot of times, right? And then the last one would be doubt and or guilt. And that one is a big detractor to maintaining spiritual balance. It's yeah. So I mean, you're doubting your beliefs. Now, there's a difference between doubting your beliefs and testing your beliefs, right? In this instance, what I'm saying is you doubt your beliefs, and that leaves you kind of wandering a little bit. Right? At the same time, there's guilt, and that guilt will stop you from acting normal, right? Because when you're guilty, you tend to cower, hide. You want to cover up. You want to get away. But those are some of the detractors from maintaining balance, right? And there's many more. Those are just the ones that kind of just popped into my head almost immediately as I was writing this whole thing out and getting this whole show together. But so when they start to show, right, and I want you to play this back, and when you start to notice signs of any of those detractors coming up, you want to do things that would rebalance you and your efforts. And oftentimes it's just the opposite of what's going on here, right? So it's like a bunch of people getting on your nerves. All right, go somewhere and solo, right? For lack of better terms, right? And it's also pretty good to spend some time by yourself so that you can reflect anyway. But I'm beating a dead horse here, right? So that's the third tip for finding success in life and after. Maintain balance. Okay, so you have all three. Now let's bring them together. Okay, so first one I mentioned, remember, number one is what? Find your purpose. Find your purpose, but your purpose, you have a dual purpose. You have a divine purpose and you have a personal purpose. And as you're achieving your personal purpose, you should be using your personal purpose to accomplish your divine purpose. But it's your purpose that provides the guide. It provides clarity. And it is what you're setting out to fulfill. Now, the next tip that I gave you was build good character. And integrity is huge here. Because what integrity does is it roots your thoughts, your actions, and your intentions in honesty, respect, and accountability. By building good character, you are ensuring that you're able to handle the success, that your character flaws won't ruin it for you. Lastly, and what we just talked about, maintaining balance is the sustaining element. Balance makes sure you can get there and stay there long term. So, with all of that being said, do what you were created to do. Do it in a morally upright manner, and do it in a sustainable way that keeps you grounded. That way, you achieve success. But not just success, true success. And not only do you get to that point of true success, but you lead a fulfilling and rich life full of meaning. And then, when it's all done, you leave a lasting impact that others can benefit from for generations to come. That's the idea here. That's, in its entirety, the 3 tips for success in life and after. Well, that's a wrap, folks. And I don't know. I'm feeling I don't know what it is. I'm all in my feelings about this one. But I hope that this little mini series that I've done here with these 3 tips, I hope it is a blessing to you all. I really do. That's my prayer, right? This was fun. This was a blast. But it's I really thoroughly enjoyed doing this. So listen, reach out, hit me up, comments, DMs, whatever, however, emails, however you can and however you feel comfortable. But just reach out. If there's any questions on the ideas that I presented here, feel free to ask. It's not like one of those things where, now, granted, I'm not really fit for a debate. Like, I don't really want to go back and forth on something. That's the last thing I want to do, especially on social media. I'm not trying to debate. But if there are earnest, honest questions about some of the stuff I presented here, then absolutely let me know. Like I said, this was a blast. And I'm not going to hold y'all too much longer, right? Because the next episode, let's go, baby. We're going to have our first guest on the Scowl Method podcast. And like I said, it's my boo. It's my boo thing. We are going to have a pretty in-depth talk about a whole bunch of stuff, right? So we're going to break it down little by little. I have a feeling this is going to be like a 2-parter. So y'all stay tuned, okay? In the meantime, I'm Coach Evan. This is Say Cheese to Live Studio, and you just got finished listening to the Scowl Method podcast, your one-stop shop for not only physical fitness, but mental fitness, emotional fitness, and spiritual fitness. All right, I'm gonna see y'all around, but find your purpose, build good character, maintain balance. Let's go.